So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we understand the time of the end as per Yirmiyahu the prophet. Then we find many areas of the relationship of the Creator and the first human being, Ibrahim. So then, Ibrahim had a couple of sons. The first son was Ishmael, the second son was Yitzhak. So let's evaluate then what this means as far as the both areas of layers related with the scripture. You find the layer of the Gentiles related with Ishmael. You find the layer of tabernacling related with Creator. So then when we read then Yirmiyahu the 61st chapter, then you find then those cities laid waste for many centuries, those are the cities of the Messiah. So then, reading from Daniel's perspective, he was then in exile. He was then explaining the layer of the Gentiles directly related with the first son. So then at the end, when we understand the time of restoration, means then whatsoever the relationship was then with the Creator and the first human being, having the first and the second sons, those are then balanced at the end of the restoration. What does it mean? The end and then the restoration period, then you have then a period of time where then the cities return and the promises of Yirmiyahu related then with even the heathen would understand. So then what can we then gather from whatsoever we have then at the moment? We understand there is a system coming very strongly. There are indications everywhere where you find then nations having more relationship trade-wise with Asia. You find verbiage related with transactions and government expenses. It is absolutely ridiculous when you begin to clear up the government's expenses and using the word transactions. You don't find these very often. Governments are by nature scoundrels. They use whatsoever problem they can create to make up the system. Those are natural fact of scoundrelization of governments. It's always like this. They can't deny it. They can't say, oh no, we have the system 100% straightened out and then the log is absolutely up to date. Never. They always use problems of the government to cover up their tracks as they steal, as they cheat, as they lie. So then when you find countries related with Asians, then you find mixing of resolving problems of the government, resolving expenses of government, and then begin to use special words such as transactions. You find outdated systems then being updated, not only updated from the very old systems of paying people, with checks, but then having the updating via computer, so then becomes part of an active subsystem preparing for the system to come. Then you find statements where then it's not shortage of money, it's shortage of people knowing how to do the work. But then when you relate with the government's expenses, then for some reason it became transactions. We don't understand the factors behind yet because we don't have the details, but they are coming later. As far as these details is already giving you the answer. You never treat government expenses with transactions. Though there is this wording when they make those payments amongst themselves. Understandable. But they don't talk about those expenses and straighten them out. You have to have a reason why you do this in your government, because you are trying to show somebody else that you are responsible. So then you begin to link up those points. We have then nations, for instance, of the Pacific, South Pacific, New Zealand, you find in Australia, with a very strong trade with the Asian market. They have another kind of understanding of trades in the market. We don't have the same. We are absolutely blind of what's coming. We are absolutely trusting a printing machine. We are not producing. We are a nation of expenses. We are not able to deal with our debts. We produce 6.5 T's and only Medicare spends more than 40. The rest of it is made up by the printing machine. The system is going to break at some point. Absolutely is going to break. You know why? Because when the system comes, the big companies, they are not going to invest in our country anymore. You know what they're going to do? They're going to get their funding and expand whatsoever they have in investments outside the country. Because the government has proven they can't manage. Let me ask you this, freighters. The Messiah himself made a reference precisely in the freighters of the earth. He was not talking about governments. He spoke directly regarding freighters. Governments are absolutely past tense. And if they don't have then taxation instantly, as the Messiah said, give to the government what belongs to the government, give to God what belongs to God. Because the Messiah was already lining up Ishmael, Yitzhak. If you evaluate then the relationship of the Ishmaelites in the future, who's going to get crude, who's not going to get crude, you begin to understand how the relationship is going to be. Now let me ask you this, government not taxing, then you find the system then comes, nations then obviously doing trade with China, investors removing the money from the country, investing directly on a non-taxed system. How are they going to find it? How are they going to track it? It's an overseas system. There is no mid person anymore. Mid person is gone. Banking as far as savings, what are they going to do with savings? Savings are gone. They are not going to let banking playing around with their money. They are going to do themselves. Banking's no more savings. Not only this, but then companies earning money in our own country, they are going to invest overseas. And the government can't prove it. How is the government going to get paid? How are they going to be federal workers and states workers? How are they going to get paid? So then, let's evaluate from the viewpoint of the Pacific trade with the Asians. Let's say, for instance, you have New Zealand, you have Australia, very strong relationship with the Asians as far as trade is concerned. Then you find in New Zealand the very finance person explaining whosoever takes charge of the finances must have then the log updated. Wait a minute. Governments that thrive upon lies, scoundrelization, cheating, family favoritism, they thrive in these situations. Then you find a very strong country related directly with Asian and then cleaning up the house. Wait a minute. It's showing you have to show that you are responsible, because then the numbers can't be negative anymore, can they? And then you find government's expenses being treated as transactions. Wait a minute. Compute this information on the computer. What does it give you? Always a positive outcome where you cannot let your numbers go down. Otherwise the computer seizes. There won't be any more mid-person. Retailers. Those people are gone. That's why those nations over there in the Pacific, they're going to get rid of their debts and try to make their logs up to date and positive. Otherwise, when they begin to do trade with them via the system, it's always positive. So then the flow of funding going in and out of the system then is positive. If you make it negative in a subsystem, you have no place to get your money from. And you can't generate more paper money. You have to have a direct relation with what you produce and money being printed. Was not the standard of gold? However, when you have a system where the market always goes up, then you have to be stabilized. If the subsystem goes down and it's a negative, then seizes up the whole counting. Why do you think those nations over there in the South Pacific are then making sure whosoever is in charge of finances, they have to update their system? Governments always, they thrive with problems, favoritism amongst people in family and in relationship, and the government becomes absolutely disgusting. And then you find strong nations then updating the system. Then they can't hire regulars from the outside. Wait a minute, you are dealing with finances and transactions, don't you? Why can't you hire then a person certified doing the work? They have to be familiar with the system. And this was done prior to visiting Malaysia. Then this video went public, and those people over there in charge, they watch those videos. What they say amongst themselves? Oh, this person is updating the information over there in the country, so we can trust them. Now, as far as our country, what are we going to do? How people are going to get paid? We are always in the negative. There is not a remote chance of having our logs then up to date. We are not even taxing. Instant taxation? How are we going to do then trade with Asians? IMF already said 36 months. They said 5 years a couple of years ago. 2 years already gone. We have only 36 months to get our information, instant taxation, revitalize our industry, simple products, and then be in the market. Targeting, for instance, South America. As we understand, the Panama Canal is going to be open next year. How is the government going to track Not only this, then our country, the government is thinking on going to the Ozarks in the midst of the forest. There is no more mid-person. Retailers are going to be gone. Banking, checking only, and skeleton checking. Because any kind of a transfer from the system into the subsystem, then they're going to be tracked. If the country tracks them. Otherwise, it stays in the system. The government can't do a damn thing. As far as what should be done, we start with the Mashiach. Give to the government what belongs to the government. Give to God what belongs to God. If the government does not tax instantly per product, every product must be taxed before coming to our country. This means via air or via ocean. If you are retailer or not retailer, every product coming out of any country must be taxed. They won't be taxed when it comes to US. It must be taxed when the purchase is made. When a person is purchasing the products from abroad. You no more the situation, oh no, first you then make a deal with the companies, then you receive the product, you don't have to pay for it, you only pay then if it's for sale and gets sold. No. Any relation with any company around the world, when they make a deal of give me this, you have to pay for it and then pay taxes. Instantly. As far as when they are on the shelf, then they get sold, then they have to make another deal. Because the prices are not the same. You purchase then the products for a price, you pay certain tax. Then you get sold for certain much, then there is another tax involved. As far as how they're going to work, it would be then the final cost when they purchase the item. They purchase for 10, they have intention of sold it for 20. Charge for 20.